Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Research Results webinar. My name is Mike Fitch with the Ohio LTAP Center here at ODOT, and we appreciate your participation. As we get started, please take a moment to locate the questions box in the GoToWebinar panel. During the presentation today, please use the questions box to send in any questions you might have. And we will discuss most of the questions at the end of the presentation. Looking at the handouts section of the GoToWebinar platform, please note also that a PDF copy of the presentation is available for reference. With that, we are ready to proceed with the presentation. Hello.
Hi, thank you, Mike. Hello, everyone. My name's Dom. I was the student lead of this Ohio Department of Transportation and Drive Ohio STAR student project. It was a year-long project. Along with me today, some of the talking will be done by my colleague student, Maithili Imani. Say hi.
Hey everyone.
And yeah, let's dive into it. We are from University of Cincinnati. We both and the rest of the team work at the Future Mobility Design Lab, which is kind of like a consultancy at the Digital Futures Building, like a Research 2030 initiative. We work with partners from government, industries, nonprofits, communities, wherever you can name it, to do human-centered research and design using our mixed research methods and technology to empower people and imagine a better quality of life in the future of Ohio, US, and internationally. Um, Both of us are international students. Our lab is has very different students from very different disciplines. So I am a Master of Design student, Maithili as well. But on this project, we've had, as you can see on the next slide, um, 10 different students, 3 faculty members, everyone from design and urban planning to civil engineering and even biology. This grant was a 1 year, $100,000 grant for mobility hubs for improving the access, safety, and economy in the future in Ohio. And based on this, we've also been able to secure 2 more ODOT grants for the next fiscal year worth 300,000. And all of this, of course, with our director. I can't forget to mention Professor Alejandro Lozano Robledo, who will hopefully be making like a hello at the end of the presentation. So to start with our project, we had 3 phases. The first one was the research phase. And you can see here a framework where we kind of use secondary research, primary research, and multimodal data collection. So what that means is secondary research, so researching what someone else has done in terms of the STEEP factors, mobility hub benchmarking, stakeholder definition. Primary research, after the secondary, went and interviewed experts, had a community survey all around Ohio, and prepared for participatory workshops. And finally, we tied it in together with multimodal data collection from GIS, OSMNX, Wangen clustering, which you will see a bit more of later, and biometric data collection. And we used those 3 to define what the case studies are going to be and finally what the conclusions of those future mobility hubs for Ohio will be. So going a little bit more into that research, STEEP factors, so it's about social, technological, economic, ecological, and political factors that we can find in Ohio to define basically, what the background of all of this is. The communities of the cities, of the policies. Then we did mobility hub benchmarking to analyze the best use cases all around the world, all the way from Seattle, Europe, and Asia, and just analyze it. As you can see here, some of the insights as, transit has to be a backbone of Mobility Hub's network, how important the land use is. So those are some kind of insights that we've gotten out of this research. And finally, megatrends, which is finding and connecting facts and future insights. And we kind of define it as having individual, community, and society levels, where individual is increasing the complexity of everyday life, kind of feeding into the blurring the lines of the surroundings, be it the land use and policy of the land use, to working with technology, to going into the higher societal level of new technologies being empowered through these kind of projects. Um, Going into research insights of the primary research, um, firstly, we did pilot expert interviews, or how we call them, subject matter expert interviews, which were partners, experts in mobility, in policy, in urban planning, from 20 different organizations, some of which you can see here in this diagram, which had experiences of just local need and demand, the need for systemic development and mobility development. Going from there into community survey, or how we call them, experienced experts, the users. It was an online survey with more than 80 responses all over Ohio. Um, Thanks to Drive Ohio for distributing or helping distribute the survey, even in places where we couldn't reach otherwise. And it produced a detailed ranking and qualitative descriptions of those needs and demands, which with analysis helped us define the structure of how we are going to go into the second phase of the design of mobility hubs. And the third pillar of the research was multimodal data collection, which we found transit and amenities data on two different databases, mapped them in GIS thanks to our partners from UC Infrastructure Institute, and then together we weighed them using that survey and interview data that I just covered in the last couple of slides, to weigh the mapped points of interest. And this framework here that you can see, so the mapped going into the framework developed based on the ways from survey and interviews, kind of sifting through proximity. So what should be located close to the hub, what should be connected to the hub, and what is it that is missing in the location that should be addressed in the hub. And it helped us find strong places in areas that we considered for the case studies to actually then triangulate and get the actual location of where we're going to develop the mobility hub case studies. And finally, biometric data collection, which Henry Levesque, a PhD student who was helping us, was developing kind of parallelly to all of this, is using heart rate sensor and a device that he developed that you can see here on the middle image, which uses GPS data and cameras to kind of produce data that we could see where the users can be stressed based on the heart rate spikes. It can be mapped, and then also we can see based on the cameras what they were looking at. So, and then with AI analysis, this is a tool that can help us determine, walking on the street, driving a car, riding on a bike, what are the stressors that we can take the interventions with the mobility hubs further. Um, and then kind of what we developed here is firstly the hubs matrix. It is based on three different parameters. First is land use, which we defined as rural, suburban, and urban based on research. The second one is levels, which is based on amount and purpose of trips, and it's local, so kind of a neighborhood hub, and a central, more of like a gateway downtown hub. And finally, the third one, case, so based on resources, economic profiles, in the rural area, the rural town, is it more of like an industry-based economy, or is it like a tourist, historical? Suburban, is it a growing suburb or an affluent, stagnant suburb? in urban areas? Is it a small city or a large city? So based on the data, we define these to kind of try to cover as much of Ohio as possible, so that this matrix can later be used by anyone defining kind of what kind of hub they need to use. But more on that a bit later. And finally, the translation framework. So moving on from research, we took the data, the insights, we developed the case study requirements and used those requirements to make them visual, to make kind of flexible basis of what's going to be the best childcare example, what's going to be the best bus stop example, etc. And we framed it in the context of each hub, and you will see which those case studies are. And then we use that to design and plan, iterate on the concepts for each case study, and finally create digital twins, so simulations in the 3D space going live of what those could look like. So more of that on here. So first was a requirements list, bubbles planning, so kind of mapping the mobilities and mobility modes and amenities in a footprint, and visual contextualization. So using historical historical images of culture together with futuristic ones to imagine what these hubs could in the end look like. We used also some new technology for this. So, for example, we used Gravity Sketch, which is a collaborative 3D sketch tool inside of an augmented reality headset where all of us together in the team could bring the 2D plans into three-dimensional life. Second one is StreetMex, which allows using NACTO guidelines to design street profiles for every specific street that we wanted to. And finally, Viscom, which is an AI tool that you can feed, and we fed some very rough CAD models of our designs and to see how these could look like and if we could go forward with the designs. Finally, the digital twins framework. So as I said, the digital simulation of an existing space where we add our design, add our concept, and the new assets like new streets into it. And we use it for research and design validation. And later we can use it to showcase to stakeholders, to use in workshops, and for decision making as well. And you can see how this process kind of went all the way from importing 3D Google models of the space, cleaning it, reconstructing the street, adding our concepts, and developing the scene with new assets. And finally, before we go into case by case studies, in general, what are our recommendations? What did we learn from all of this? What did we conclude? And you will see later, we developed a kind of a toolkit, a playbook, which anyone can use, where all of this is in. But what should these future hubs for Ohio be? Firstly, well-connected multimodal spaces and community-oriented places. So both of those at the same time. What does that mean? So spaces where people can transfer, switch mobility modes safely and comfortably, but not just a transfer point, but also a place, placemaking, a place where the communities can connect, grow, relax, have public space. And they're important because they are community economic development tools. So a lot of research shows just how much, especially even in rural areas, and just to say, this is probably one of the first one, if not the first case study of this sort in the world, also looking at mobility hub networks in rural areas and connecting rural, suburban, and urban areas. And so especially in rural areas, how bringing the amenities and mobility closer to people is such a huge economic development tool. And it is because mobility of present and future for people and goods are present there. It improves access and quality of life. It creates a flexible space that can grow with people and technology. And finally, it reverses the negative economic and demographic trends, which are apparent in a lot of Ohio's unique landscapes. And now on to my Philly.
Hi. The way that we envisioned the development of the hub was in almost a building blocks way, almost like Lego pieces layered and put together. So, the process would start with choosing a location. So, using primary research data collection methods that Dom mentioned, like surveys, interviews, and site visits, we can determine the need and demand, which would ensure that the hub that we build is actually usable. The second step would be to ensure that the hub design is based on user needs and with the context of the location, so connecting the site to its surroundings. It's important for the hub to assimilate into the area and meet the needs of each community that it serves. A hub that is designed without the consideration of where it's being placed would lead to the community residents not actually adopting it. And third, mix and match the amenities and mobility. So it's creating the right recipe with amenities and mobility modes in the hub that we design. It's important to consider the demographic and transportation patterns that already exist in the area, so the hub provides relevant services. And the last, sorry, and choosing the right mobility modes is also important to provide flexibility and accessibility. So, as an example, for a passenger switching from rail to bus, creating a space or a connecting point for seamless transitions between the modes of transport, or even create a pleasant waiting space is important. And fourth, creating a pleasant experience. Users should feel safe, comfortable, and welcome in the space, and this makes the journey or even visiting the hub more enjoyable. It should take into account the community user's lifestyle, it should enhance the quality of life, and also it should be designed well with the aesthetic side of it. So a few examples of how we took that building blocks framework into our case study was for choosing the locations, as Dom showed us before, multimodal data collection, which included mapping places, which are the different amenities in the area, and an example of clustering to provide more local context. An example of uh, enhancement of the streets, which is slimming them, adding bike lanes, which have access to the sidewalk leading to the hub for accessibility. Live information is displayed, and the street generally flows better to existing and projected employment centers. So, this is an example of how we used uh, connecting the street context to the place. The third example was collecting best case examples from public spaces or hubs all around the world and finding emerging trends and technology to incorporate into the hub designs. And lastly, for the pleasant experience, incorporating intelligently designed products or services that support the ecosystem, like, as an example, the area's wildlife, which makes the hub not just human centric but life centric. Using the hub matrix that we introduced before, which anyone could pinpoint themselves or their community on the matrix and receive a label. So, as an example, rural, local, or suburban central, their given label, we created a checklist of sorts to illustrate what are should haves or what are some things that you should consider having or would be nice to have or would not be needed in the land use type that you have pinpointed yourself on. And now, moving on to our final case study concepts that we visualize through digital twins. So the first one is our rural local historical case study, which is based in Millersburg. Millersburg was chosen as a case study for its rural mobility challenges and a strong Amish community presence. We envisioned a small market style hub that would improve connectivity while also preserving the cultural dynamics of the area. It would have features like intuitive wayfinding, improvement to the streetscape like raised crosswalk, and natural green barriers to enhance the walkability of the area, and or would also have co-location to amenities like grocery stores or pharmacies. All of these features would make the hub a social and economical anchor. Our next one is our rural historical central hub based in Berlin, Ohio. So it would contain mobility modes and amenities, parking for bikes, a well-designed transit area, a public space that is open and flexible for events or pop-ups, a community center or space, accessible transportation options. An example of that is a bike highway that would connect the hub to the town and other places, an open space for events and local businesses. The hub would also be connected to activities like a trail nearby, a space for delivery through drones and incorporating green energy production like solar panels. Our next case study is the Rural Central Industrial, which is based in Mount Gilead in Ohio. This area was selected because of its role as a center uh, in in a predominantly rural area. So it serves as a key hub for local industries like healthcare, manufacturing, and education. Creating a hub here would offer almost a connection point for surrounding rural areas to address their transportation needs for both the workforce and the residents that live there.
Back to me a little bit. We're starting now with our three case studies in suburban areas. And suburban areas we defined as cities of a certain size and a density of population that are not economic centers on their own, but are very connected to large cities in their vicinity. So first one is Anderson Township, which is a city next to Cincinnati, which is close to us. And we start with a local affluent hub, which you can see here, having everything from better transit and especially microtransit and autonomous shuttle connections because suburban areas like this where cars are abundant and available, um, offering a level more of convenience using transit uh, definitely ups the possibilities of multimodal success in these areas. So everything from specific area and very nice waiting area for ride sharing, such as Uber and Lyft, to utilizing definitely a lot of carpooling, to community gardens and grocery stores to fill out food deserts in the area, and childcare to fill out childcare deserts in the area. Um, all the way to, of course, incorporating um, electric vehicle charging spots, public spaces, connections to nature and trails in the vicinity, etc. But that is even more apparent in our um, main suburban hub, which is in downtown Anderson Township. And this is also an example of our recommendation of not to do of doing redevelopment instead of building completely from anew. For example, this one connects to a trail and a building of a current community center, and also reutilizes or redevelops dilapidated buildings that are currently in the space. It utilizes also a lot of pop-ups for local shops, local restaurants. It offers a level of flexibility. So flexibility was a really big term for us in developing all of these hubs because not only does it have to grow with time with the community, but it also has to offer, especially in areas like suburban areas. So there's not a lot of things that are there 24/7, 365 days a year. So offering flexible space where businesses can come and promote, but do not necessarily have to pay for stores all of the time. Um, all the way to, for example, having trees that bear fruits in front of the building that offer, for example, free food. And finally, suburban central in a growing suburb of Forest Park, north of Cincinnati. Um, a historically very diverse suburb, and it's currently, because of that, it is very fastly growing. And we focused here mostly on getting amenities that are missing, such as a larger library, better and bigger spaces for waiting for all different types of mobility from buses that do exist there, because it's a lower income level. Transit is more of a primary method than in Anderson Township. Um, so, very convenient waiting areas for that, for carpool, for rideshare, all the way to, again, reutilizing a lot of what is already out there. It's not pictured in here, but there's currently a police station, a community center, and a rec center there. And rec center is a big thing for suburban areas. So incorporating rec center, just covering current tennis courts, would be a big thing. And then also a lot for the elderly. So, care, healthcare, etc., is something that we definitely considered here.
So from here, we move on to our urban case studies. Our first one is the Urban Local Large, and it's located in uptown Cincinnati. It's located just north of downtown and would serve as a key urban local hub since the location would make it optimum for the blend of residential, commercial, and institutional spaces. As an example, it's located close to UC spaces, it's located close to residential spaces around UC and otherwise, and commercial spaces too. It's well positioned to address the local mobility needs, and the hub would focus on enhancing the connectivity to other nearby educational institutions, healthcare facilities, and public amenities, which would offer more sustainable and accessible transportation options for both residents and visitors.
And of course, giving a lot of new green space, which is very important in the cities. And that is especially true also for our downtown hub, downtown Cincinnati hub, which is Urban Central Large, is the biggest one that we've proposed here because it's for a large city. So here, the location is really interesting. What we are saying, there's already a sunken highway going right through downtown Cincinnati. Something not really as Boston's Big Dig, but kind of close, kind of covering 2 blocks of that highway, building a large central hub. There's already below ground transit center that's unused for Cincinnati Metro that could be reutilized for a lot of inner city inner city transportation connecting to the rail station, and autonomous vehicles, because then they're kind of separated from the rest of the traffic, all the way to giving a lot more space to the public bus system, to public spaces like this second level park, which also serves as kind of like a viewpoint area, not covering the view down Vine Street all the way to River Ohio, and having like a park, spaces dedicated for children, spaces dedicated for events, a lot of vertiports for passenger and delivery drones, having it enough like in a position and with walls and sound barriers in a way that it doesn't impede the quality of life in nearby residential buildings. A lot of redesign of the streets to be safer, to be multimodal, utilizing the where the current bus lines go, where the current streetcar line goes, um, all the way to how we designed the hub itself and the facade, for example, how we put or how we propose, for example, to put the glass panels versus the non-transparent panels for it to be more energy efficient. So where the sun goes in the summer to be more covered, when the sun goes in the winter to be more open, all the way to, as we were mentioning, all of them before, like more flexible spaces on the street, in the hub itself, having covered sidewalks to shield from the elements, a lot of digital and multi-sensory um, information being given out. So like really all the levels that we said were considered here, from how we chose the location, how we decided to connect it to the spaces that are currently existing around it, from residential to business, in a way that it can enhance even the businesses that are not in the hub but around it, to how the mobility is co-located with the amenities, which is really important, and we discussed that a lot in our report as well. So, there are certain amenities, certain things that should be connected, for example, more with the bus, and certain things that should be connected more with the rideshare, because different types of users are more inclined to use different types of amenities. So it really goes over all four blocks of all four building blocks that we propose for the hub. And before we go to the last hub, which Maithili will cover, I just want to use this opportunity to really just reiterate why this was important. Is all of these 9 hubs, all of these 9 concepts, case studies, were designed not so they serve as, okay, we're going to build this right now, right here, but as a visual show of how these checklists, how these building blocks, how these requirements and recommendations would work in some very specific places around Ohio that can be representative of other places too. So that communities, mayors, nonprofits, companies can come, see this, see how it should be developed, because visual and especially when it's simulated like this, from our experience, works much better than just having a report. So this is the true power of having something visual like this, and just even designing something like these concepts for these case studies. And I will let Maithili cover the last one.
So our last case study is the Urban Central Small, and this one is located in Youngstown, downtown in Youngstown. So we chose this as our case study for this land use label since it's a smaller city with a concentrated uh, core of commerce and industry and public services. It has a growing population and a potential to become a much bigger place. It also serves as a focal point for local businesses, government services, and community spaces. So the design is, again, like we said, open, flexible for community spots, event spaces, has commerce options such as shops that are integrated into the building. One of the biggest changes that we made was the streetscape to make it much more walkable and much more accessible to residents than the area is right now. And it's also built to grow with the city. We designed this taking into consideration the local culture and architecture, so it assimilates perfectly with its surroundings. And lastly, as an amalgamation of all of our work, we created a playbook, which is a step-by-step guide designed to help communities plan and implement mobility hubs. It breaks down these complex urban planning concepts and ideas and frameworks into accessible and actionable uh, insights for residents, planners, local organizations, or anyone who wants to do better for their community or explore what could be possible for their community, which promotes more connected, inclusive, and people centered communities. A resident of a community could read this and understand what a mobility hub could do for their space. How do they design this? A hub in their place and what all they would need to do together, the steps that they would need, the kind of research that they would need to do to prove that their space needs a mobility hub.
Thank you, Maithili. Here's a QR code that all of you can use to check out our playbook and download it and use it for yourselves. So just give you a couple more seconds to take a pic if you want, or a screenshot or something so you can access the playbook. But we'll be also, anyone can contact us and we'll be happy to share the playbook as well. And finally, before the questions, and I see there are some questions, so we will address that immediately. But just saying, so reiterating on, we did receive next grants with ODOT and Drive Ohio, STAR grants for 25, 26, one of which uses a lot of what we did here and uses the hubs as digital twins as to use in immersive STEAM educational toolkits for K to 12, so that kind of we teach the educators on how they could use VR headsets and that kind of technology to teach and develop workforce for future mobility technology, and a drone in a box system, which will be really, really interesting. Michael is working on that one. Um, but also for us, what this means is advancing technical and participatory capabilities, really going into what can we actually do with the surveys, with the interviews, with the workshops, learning more about how to conduct those, how to do playbooks and toolkits like this, and also what is our next step, and that is creating an interactive playbook, which is almost like a car configurator, but for hubs that would be available as a website to stakeholders. So we are currently in the process of developing that. For you, the playbook, to start a conversation or start a development of some projects like these. And what we ask of you, contact us, you know who we are. We're always happy to advance partnerships with organizations or government, and to develop different projects with partners, either for these kind of hubs. So if anyone is interested in advancing the framework or developing the hubs themselves in their communities, or if it's some different project as well. Um, but yes, this is where we are going into the future, and this is the QR code to our lab website where you can find contact information from especially Alejandra Lozano Robledo, who is our lab director. So thank you all for listening and being here. Mike, do we have anything else before we dive into questions?
Hi, thanks, Dom. Just a reminder to our audience that the questions box is available. So please feel free to type in any questions you might have. And Dom, we did have one question from Gary.
Yes. So the question is about uh, trees attracting that bear fruit, attracting bees, ants, etc., that are high maintenance in a non-rural area. That's the first part of the question. Now let me just go back a little bit to that part. For example, here, this is a suburban one. So in general, this is a really cool recommendation that we've discovered a lot of places in Europe do. So this is something that's happening in Athens in Greece, in Paris, and not just around the hubs, but actually in a lot of residential, especially residential streets. And it is especially, the first goal is to have um, uh, have that as kind of the first line in defense against hunger, because it is something that is provided by the city and that anyone can use in a public space. It is a little bit more maintenance, of course, but not too much. And on the part of, for example, bugs, it is that is the second goal, is actually of bringing in the nature a little bit back into the cities. So a lot of research that's been done in the past 5 to 10 years has been about how, especially in American cities, but also around Europe and Asia, um, this very, very strict um, zoning and how residential streets are done compared to how downtown streets are done compared to how industrial streets are done, and the buildings as well, um, has proven that it was a pretty much failed concept, and that blending is is the future. Blending the land use, blending the zoning, blending the streetscapes and how we do the streetscapes. So bringing in more of this kind of rural standard nature, like a little bit in a very maintained way, is the way to go to combat climate issues such as heat islands, uh, covering and protecting from the elements, but also then giving some kind of food, visual, bringing in the bees, which is really important, bringing in indigenous plant species. Because, for example, how what plants are used in now mostly, especially in cities around Ohio, is trees and plants that do not contribute to the biodiversity. Um, they only bring in a lot of, for example, allergies. So bringing in native species and fruit species actually brings the levels of allergies down while reintroducing a little bit of that wildlife back in. So there are some cons, of course, as with everything, but in our view, why we recommend it is that the pros definitely outweigh the cons in a lot of different ways. And the second part of the question is the cost effectiveness of non-standard column shapes. So we didn't worry about that yet. So a lot of what you saw here is not actually like feasible to build, so to speak. We did not involve, for example, structural engineers, because the point of this is to have design concepts. So not actually that can something that can be built, but design concepts that can look very visual appealing, a bit flashy, show off a lot of different aspects of the insights and of the recommendations that we propose. So maybe, or probably, a lot of them don't have to be all at the same time in every hub. These are, huge buildings. They don't have to be huge buildings at all times. So this was more concepts for show, so that communities, so that governments can know, what is possible, and for later to be able to go through these videos, or even through, in VR headsets, through experiences and walk through it to see all the different like facets of what could be possible and take away some of those. I hope this answers the question.
Thanks, Dom. The questions box is still available. And while we are waiting for any additional questions, we do have Vicky Fout from ODOT's research section on the line as well. So, Vicky, if you have any additional comments to share, please feel free.
Vicky was a great help all throughout the project. We have to give a shout out, so not just to our professor Alejandro, but also like the entire team. It was a big team, and then also to ODOT and Drive Ohio with Vicky and Nick and Rich, who were great help and listened to us for almost an hour every month.
Yeah, we just want to thank the research team for the fantastic work they've done on this study. It was a little bit out of the box from what you typically see from a DOT, and we thought they did an excellent job on it. We are finalizing all of the documents that will be published on the ODOT research website, so you'll be able to get the final report, the fact sheet, the playbook, and all the other wonderful deliverables that they produced from this study from our website as well.
Thank you, Vicky.
All right, thanks, Vicky. Looking at the questions box, we do not see any additional questions at this time. So I guess we will be able to adjourn today's presentation. We want to thank the research team for presenting today's webinar. We really appreciate it. And thanks everybody for your participation. Have a good day.
Thank you.
Thank you.